Welcome to the Globe Theatre, 1599, where one wrong line could end your career or your life. I'm an actor in Shakespeare's company. The crowd is ruthless. They throw rotten fruit if they're bored, and the city authorities are watching for anything that might be considered treason. Backstage, it's pure chaos, Faye. We're changing costumes between scenes, some of us playing multiple roles, and yes, I have to play a woman because actual women... But when you step onto that stage under the candlelight, with 1,000 eyes watching, speeding Shakespeare's words, there's nothing else like it.
Hey there. Before we dive into this, if you're enjoying what you're hearing, do me a favor and hit that like button. Maybe even subscribe if you haven't already. And seriously, tell me, where are you tuning in from right now? And what time is it for you? The year is 1599, and you're not in your comfortable chair anymore. You're jostling, shoulder to shoulder, in a grimy London yard, the very heart of Elizabethan entertainment. Immediately, the stench assaults you. It's a thick, cloying miasma of horse dung trodden into the mud, the sour tang of stale ale spilled from countless tankards, the pungent odor of unwashed human bodies packed too close, and the faint, unsettling whiff of the open sewers that snake through the city. It's a smell that doesn't just assault your nose. It coats the back of your throat, clings to your rough woolen clothes, and seems to seep into the very pores of your skin, a constant, unavoidable reminder of the city's raw, untamed pulse. The press of the crowd is relentless. You're shoved forward, then pulled back, a mere molecule in a surging, restless ocean of humanity. Every face around you, etched with anticipation or impatience, seems ready to erupt into cheers or jeers at a moment's notice. You crane your neck, catching glimpses of rival players from the Admiral's men, their colorful, if slightly faded, banner rippling defiantly from their nearby playhouse. Their eyes, you feel, are on you, a silent, predatory assessment, a challenge sharper than any blade. You know they whisper tales of your troops' mishaps, hoping to steal away a patron, a noble's favor. The air crackles with an unspoken tension, a cutthroat competition that makes allies scarce and enemies plentiful. A half-eaten apple, rotten at the core, whizzes past your ear, meant for a flailing clown on your own troop's stage, barely missing its mark. The roar of the audience is a living, breathing beast, capable of both ecstatic praise that lifts you to the heavens and brutal, instant condemnation that can drag you through the mud. One fumbled line, one mistimed entrance, or even an accidental word that offends a powerful noble lurking in the galleries, and you could find yourself not just pelted with rotten vegetables, but facing far graver consequences, perhaps even accusations of treason. Your own stomach clenches, a familiar knot of fear and adrenaline twisting tighter with every passing second. This isn't just about performing. It's about sheer, desperate survival. Your next meal, the straw mattress you call a bed, the very continuation of your company, all hang precariously on the fickle whims of this rowdy, often violent crowd, and the influential figures whose favor is as fleeting as the London fog. You constantly brace yourself for the dreaded news of a plague closure, a single whisper of sickness in the city that could empty the playhouses overnight, plunging you and your fellow actors into instant destitution, forced to beg or turn to less savory trades. In this relentless world, every breath is a performance, every moment a high-stakes gamble for dignity and survival. You realize that ambition here isn't a quiet dream. It's a desperate, stinking battle fought in the open air, where only the most ruthless and resilient find a way to stand upright, day after grueling day, amidst the chaos and the clamor. The final word of your desperate monologue hangs in the air, a fragile ghost dissolving into the vast, cavernous space of the globe. Your lungs burn, chest heaving beneath the constricting layers of fabric and whalebone, a cruel corset pinching your ribs as you embody the tragic queen. The ringing in your ears is almost deafening, a phantom echo of your own voice, now abruptly absent. You stand utterly still, every muscle screaming from the effort, a thin sheen of sweat cooling rapidly on your brow. The expectant hum of the restless crowd, the previous shouts and the clatter of tankards has vanished. It's replaced by an unnerving, absolute silence. This isn't just a quiet moment. It's a living, breathing void that swallows your performance whole. You can feel the hundreds of eyes upon you, unseen but palpably present, their collective gaze a physical weight pressing down on your shoulders. The silence stretches, a torturous eternity, longer than any line you've ever had to memorize. Your heart thumps a frantic rhythm against your ribs, a drumbeat of pure adrenaline and fear. Did you stumble over a word? Did your voice crack at the critical moment? Did that subtle gesture, rehearsed in stolen minutes backstage, fail to convey the intended anguish? Or, worse, did you inadvertently utter something that could be twisted, interpreted as sedition, by a powerful noble perhaps lurking in the shadows of a private box? The possibility is a cold dread, a tightening vice around your chest, because one wrong syllable could mean more than just a ruined performance. It could mean the end of your freedom, or even your life. You search the faces of the groundlings closest to the stage, desperate for a flicker of approval, a hint of emotion. Their expressions are unreadable, a blank wall of judgment. A few men in the pit scratch their beards. Others simply stare, their mouths slightly agape. You can almost hear the gears turning in their minds, dissecting your every move, weighing your worth. The silence feels like a condemnation, a collective shrug that dismisses your monumental effort. Your carefully powdered face, hidden beneath the heavy wig, feels hot with a flush of humiliation. All those hours spent perfecting the feminine gait, the delicate hand gestures, the high-pitched voice, all the discomfort of the corsets and layers of skirts, only to be met with this deafening non-response. The air is thick with the unspoken, a silent verdict more crushing than any volley of rotten vegetables. Then, a cough. A single, isolated hack from the back of the pit that somehow echoes louder than a clap of thunder. It's followed by another, then a restless shuffle of feet, and slowly, agonizingly slowly, a murmur begins to rise. Not a cheer, not a boo, just a hesitant, uncertain murmur. Like a tide pulling back from the shore, you feel a desperate, primal urge to flee, to shed the heavy gown and wig, and disappear into the anonymity of the grimy London streets, to escape the crushing weight of public indifference. In this precarious world, where fame is fleeting and fortune a distant dream, you learn that sometimes the absence of sound can be the most potent and terrifying sound of all, a stark reminder of how fragile your existence truly is. The straw mattress beneath you is a landscape of sharp, unyielding ridges and sudden, hollow dips. Every shift of your weight sends a dry, rustling protest through the room. A sound that seems to amplify the already palpable silence of the barn. You pull the threadbare blanket tighter, but it's little comfort against the creeping dampness that seems to seep from the very stones of the wall. And then, the itch begins. It starts subtly, a phantom tickle on your ankle, then your arm, then your neck. You know it's not just the rough straw. You scratch, a frantic, desperate movement, knowing full well you're only spreading whatever tiny unseen inhabitants have made this temporary bed their home. The smell of the barn is heavy, a rich, earthy mixture of stale hay, the faint tang of animal droppings from stalls nearby, and the cloying sweetness of fermenting apples from a corner storage. It clings to your clothes, your hair, even the inside of your nostrils, a constant reminder that this rough, temporary lodging is your only refuge after a day spent performing in the drizzle of a market square. Your body aches with a dull, pervasive throb. Every muscle, from your weary calves that carried you for miles to your vocal cords hoarse from bellowing to the indifferent crowds, protests with a quiet intensity. You turn, trying to find a position that offers even a sliver of relief, but the straw crunches and shifts, offering no true solace. Through the gaps in the rough-hewn planks, the wind whistles a mournful tune, carrying with it the undeniable chill of the late autumn night. You hear the soft snorts and restless movements of the horses in their stalls below, their presence a strangely comforting, if malodorous, companion. Elsewhere in the gloom, you can hear the deep, even breathing of your fellow actors, some already lost to the depths of sleep, others, like you, still wrestling with the discomfort, their occasional coughs or groans cutting through the quiet. You feel a pang of resentment, knowing that for all the fleeting applause you might snatch, this is the true reality of your chosen life. Sleeping on a flea-ridden mattress in a stranger's barn, miles from any comfort, your limbs screaming in protest. The glamour, if it ever existed, feels 1,000,000 miles away. As you finally begin to drift, a sudden sharp jab of straw pokes you just above the eye, jolting you awake with a frustrated gasp. You rub the spot, eyes wide open in the darkness. The social stigma of being an actor, a vagabond, feels as palpable as the cold seeping into your bones. No matter how grand the words you speak on stage, off it, you are still considered barely above a rogue, tolerated only for the fleeting entertainment you provide. You realize that even in sleep, there is no true rest, no escape from the relentless demands of this life, where every morning brings another journey, another performance, and another night of fighting for comfort on a bed of prickly straw. The chill isn't just in the air of this cramped lodging house. It feels as if it's seeping directly from the rough plaster walls, chilling your very bones. You pull the thin, scratchy blanket higher, but it offers little defense against the pervasive dampness and the incessant symphony of sounds that filter through the almost non-existent barriers separating you from your fellow players. Every cough from the next cot, every restless shift, every low groan as someone tries to find a comfortable position on their lumpy mattress is magnified, echoing in the small, dark room. Privacy is a forgotten luxury, a concept as distant as the applause from last night's successful performance. You lie there, exhausted but unable to fully surrender to sleep, your body humming with a residual tremor from the day's multiple rolls. The smell of cheap candle wax, stale beer, and unwashed wool hangs heavy, a collective effluvium of too many bodies packed into too small a space. From beyond your wall, you hear a low, rhythmic murmur. It's not a conversation, but the almost hypnotic drone of one of your company, an older player, running lines under his breath. Even in the dead of night, the words of the play, new lines for a new part, are being hammered into memory, a desperate, silent battle against forgetfulness. You close your eyes, trying to block out the intrusion, but the words, fragments of dialogue, seem to seep directly into your own weary mind, pulling you back to the stage, to the pressure, to the relentless demand for perfection. You shift, feeling the familiar aches in your shoulders and legs from performing a vigorous sword fight in the morning, then transforming into a demure maiden in a voluminous skirt and tight corset for the afternoon show, only to rush back to a male supporting role by evening. Each change of costume, each transformation drains you not just physically but mentally. The memory of a close call from last week, a scene tearing in your elaborate lady costume mid-scene, sends a familiar flush of heat through your face. The humiliation of such an event, exposed and vulnerable, is a sting you still remember, a cruel twist of the knife when your dignity is already so precarious. A burst of drunken laughter erupts from the public room below, followed by a crashing sound that makes you flinch. The host, perhaps, dealing with an unruly patron. It's a stark reminder of the volatile world outside your thin walls, a world where your livelihood depends on holding the attention of often belligerent, ale-soaked crowds. You think of the manager always fretting about the next performance, the next coin, the constant low-burning fear of offending some local dignitary with an unapproved line, or worse, a visit from the censors who could shut your entire troupe down, leaving you all penniless and adrift. In this shared existence you realize there is no true solitude, no quiet retreat from the relentless demands of your life. Even in sleep, the echoes of your fellow actors, struggles, fears, and desperate ambitions are your constant, unwelcome companions, reminding you that survival in this cutthroat world is a collective, often noisy, burden. The smell of the iron gall ink is sharp, metallic, almost bitter, as you hold the crumpled Q script in your hands. It's not just the scent of aged paper. It's the acrid tang of history, of urgency, and of countless hours spent bent over flickering candlelight, etching words into memory. You trace a finger over the densely packed lines, a faint smudge of ink transferring to your skin, a permanent stain that feels like a mark of your perilous profession. This isn't a full play. It's a mere sliver, a fragment. Here you have only your own speeches, followed by a few trigger words, a cue from the actor who speaks before you. The rest of the play, the grand sweep of the narrative, the intricate dance of dialogue, exists only in the minds of your company, a fragile tapestry woven from individual threads, each one memorized in isolation. Your eyes swim over the text, trying to imprint every syllable, every comma, every rhetorical flourish onto your exhausted brain. The pressure is a palpable weight in your chest, a constant hum beneath your skin. There are no full company rehearsals, not truly. You run through scenes in hurried whispers backstage, perhaps a quick blocking session with a few fellow players, but mostly you're left to your own devices to conjure a character and its intricate speeches from these bare bones of a script. You think of the hundreds of lines you've already committed to memory for other plays, other parts, all jostling for space in your weary mind. It's a precarious balancing act, a constant fear that one role will override another, that a line from a comedy will spill out during a tragedy. You hear the muffled roar of the Globe audience, a hungry beast impatient for the next scene, and your stomach clenches. You're due back on stage in mere moments, transformed into a different character entirely. And you still feel a slight uncertainty about a particularly convoluted soliloquy in the next act. You run the words silently, mouthing them, tasting their rhythm, hoping they'll stick. You glance across the crowded backstage space, a chaotic warren of flung costumes, painted flats, and jostling bodies, to catch the eye of a fellow actor. He offers a quick, tight nod of shared understanding, a silent acknowledgement of the impossible task laid before you all. You both know the stakes. A forgotten line can derail an entire scene, drawing the ire of the audience and, more terrifyingly, the cold, calculating gaze of the playwright himself. Gaining Shakespeare's favor, securing a prominent role in one of his new works, is the holy grail for every actor in the company, and you feel the sharp edges of that competition pressing in. A flawless performance, a particularly moving delivery, can elevate you in his esteem, earning you better parts, more stage time, and a greater share of the company's meager profits. But a single mistake, a perceived inadequacy, can just as quickly send you tumbling down the hierarchy, overlooked for the next juicy role, struggling to catch his eye. The ink on the page isn't just words, it's your livelihood, your standing, your very future. It's a cruel game, you realize, played with words and memory, where your mind is both your greatest tool and your most vulnerable weakness, constantly tested, under the most intense pressure. The taste in your mouth is dry, like old parchment, a physical manifestation of the mental desert you're trying to cross. Your eyes ache, burning from hours spent poring over the small hand-copied sheets of paper, each one a precious, guarded fragment of the play. You pace the cramped confines of the changing room, a forgotten corner behind the main stage, the scent of stale grease paint and sweat thick in the air. Each step is a rhythm, a mnemonic beat to lodge lines deeper into your skull. You mutter, almost hiss, the complex verse, trying to feel its contours, its hidden paths. This isn't just about reciting words. It's about building an entire world in your head, a memory palace, where every turn of phrase, every crucial exit and entrance has its own designated corner. Because you don't have a full copy of the play, not truly. No grand map of the narrative, just these isolated fragments, your lines and the last few words of the actor before you. You have to conjure the rest, piece together the emotional arc from whispered cues and half-remembered blocking. You try to visualize the grand hall, the darkened forest, the intimate chamber, placing each key speech within its imagined setting, anchoring it with a mental image. You see the expression on your fellow actor's face as he delivers his cue, feel the precise moment you must step forward, the light in which you'll stand. It's a desperate, solitary construction, built in the chaos of backstage, often with the distant roar of the audience already a prelude to your call. The pressure feels like a tight band around your forehead, tightening with every forgotten syllable, every moment of hesitation. One missed word, one fumbled cadence, and the illusion shatters. Not just for the audience, but for Shakespeare himself, his sharp eyes missing nothing from the wings, his presence a silent judge, his favor a precarious thing, easily lost, rarely gained. You know that perfectly delivered lines, especially in a new play, are your currency here, your only way to secure a better part, a more substantial share of the company's profits. The cutthroat politics are played not with swords, but with flawless memorization. You see the younger boys, barely more than children, playing women's roles, diligently mouthing their own partial scripts, their faces etched with the same silent, desperate plea for accuracy. Your temples throb, a steady, insistent drum. You rub them, wishing for a moment of quiet, a space where the hundreds of lines from half a dozen different plays aren't competing for dominance in your mind. You close your eyes for a brief moment, picturing the vast, dark expanse of your internal palace, hoping every word is firmly in its place, ready to be summoned at a moment's notice. You realize that in this demanding life, your most critical stage isn't the globe itself, but the intricate, fragile theater, built solely within the confines of your own mind, where entire worlds are created and lost with a single lapse of memory, and where your very survival depends on its unwavering performance. The rough, unvarnished wood of the stage scrapes against your bare shins as you move, a constant, low-level abrasion. You can feel the faint, dry grit of dust clinging to your skin, a fine layer that seems to have settled into every pore of the worn planks. The air in the globe's vast open airspace is still cool, holding the lingering dampness of the pre-dawn hours, long before the sun climbs high enough to warm the wooden tiers. You're on the bare stage, no props, no elaborate backdrops, just the scarred floorboards, the ghostly echoes of past performances hanging in the stillness. A sharp, sudden prick makes you wince, a tiny splinter working its way into the sole of your foot, a subtle, unwelcome reminder of the raw, unrefined nature of your craft. You ignore it, a habit born of necessity, knowing that a deeper, more painful jab could genuinely sideline you for a day, and a day out of work means a day without pay. Your body already protests with a dull, pervasive ache. You've played a wizened old man in one production, a swaggering soldier in another, and then a quick change into a spirited young maiden for an evening's comedy, all in the span of yesterday. Now, this morning, before the crowds arrive, you're trying to block out a new scene, a complex sword fight, with only a wooden stick to represent your gleaming blade. The footwork is intricate, demanding, your limbs heavy with fatigue. You grunt softly as you parry an imaginary blow, your muscles stretching, protesting, but you push through the stiffness, willing your body to remember the choreography. A few other players are scattered across the vast stage, shadowy figures in their everyday clothes, muttering lines under their breath, their voices hushed and urgent in the cavernous space. This isn't a true rehearsal, not in the way a modern audience might imagine. There's no director meticulously guiding every movement, no extensive run-throughs. This is a quick, desperate attempt to solidify the movements, to etch the stage positions and the precise timing into your mind and muscle memory before the crowds descend. You glance at the master of the company, a severe, unblinking presence standing near the tiring house, his arms crossed, his gaze sharp. He misses nothing. Every slight hesitation, every misplaced step, noted and mentally filed away. His approval, his nod of satisfaction, is a fleeting, precious commodity, a testament to your ability to deliver without the luxury of proper preparation. The pressure of learning lines, of mastering new roles on the fly, combines with the physical toll, creating a constant, low-grade hum of anxiety. You know that rival companies are always watching, ready to exploit any weakness, any stumble, any moment of disarray within your ranks. And the theater itself, this grand wooden, while a stage for wonders, is also a harsh taskmaster. Every creak of the floorboards under your heavy boots, every rough edge and potential splinter, is a small, constant reminder of the physical demands of a life lived on the boards. You realize that even the simple act of walking across this bare, splintered stage is a testament to your endurance, a small battle fought against fatigue and physical discomfort, all in pursuit of the fleeting magic that happens when the crowds arrive, and the real performance begins. A cold shock runs through your arm, followed by the jarring clang of blunted steel on steel, reverberating through the vast open-air theater. You parry hard, the impact jolting up to your shoulder, sending a tremor through your already aching muscles. Sweat beads on your brow, stinging your eyes, but you dare not wipe it away. Your opponent, a fellow player whose face is a mask of fierce concentration, lunges again, his blunted rapier a silver blur. You duck, feeling the displaced air whisper past your ear, a hair's breadth from your temple. This isn't just acting. It's a dangerous dance, choreographed violence, where one misstep, one lapse in timing, could mean a real injury, a twisted ankle, a bruised rib, even a broken nose. And a hurt actor is a useless actor, a mouth without coin, a body without bread. The heavy woolen tunic you wear, part of your current costume, restricts your movement, clinging uncomfortably to your damp skin. Each thrust and parry is physically draining, a calculated expenditure of energy that your body, already weary from playing 3 different roles earlier today, struggles to provide. You can hear the distant murmur of the groundlings, their collective breath a low hum, occasionally punctuated by a shouted comment or a burst of drunken laughter. Their eyes are on you, demanding a spectacle, demanding perfection, utterly unaware of the razor-thin margin between illusion and genuine pain. The blunted tip of your opponent's blade grazes your ribs during a particularly swift thrust, a cold, startling touch that momentarily steals your breath. It's a vivid, chilling reminder of how close you are to true harm, how quickly a performance could turn into a real-life tragedy on these very boards. You recall the whispers of a rival troupe, how one of their leading men was laid up for weeks after a botched stage fight, the rumor suggesting deliberate sabotage from within their own ranks, a cutthroat move to unseat him. Such tales are a constant, low-level thrum of fear, a reminder that the competition extends beyond ticket sales and critical acclaim. It can descend into outright malice. Your own heart thumps a frantic rhythm, not just from the exertion, but from the fear of a serious injury that could leave you utterly destitute, discarded by the company, shunned by society. You meet your opponent's gaze for a fleeting second, a silent agreement passing between you, a shared understanding of the precarious tightrope you both walk, balancing realism with safety, all for the fleeting applause of a demanding crowd. The cold metal of the blunted blade, though designed for safety, still carries a chilling echo of real violence, a constant counterpoint to the dramatic words you're speaking. You realize that every clang, every near miss, every strained muscle is a testament to the brutal, beautiful lie you're selling. This isn't just about art. It's a desperate struggle for survival, a physical and mental battle fought under the relentless scrutiny of hundreds of eyes, where your body is both your instrument and your most vulnerable point of failure. The rich, dark velvet of the doublet slides over your shoulders, heavy and surprisingly cool against your skin. Immediately, the smell hits you, a deep, musty scent, like old spices mixed with forgotten potpourri and the faint, unmistakable odor of sweat absorbed by fine fabrics over countless wearings. You know this isn't new cloth. It's salvaged, perhaps from a nobleman's estate sale after his demise, or bartered from a merchant who deals in the cast-offs of the gentry. This elegant garment, with its tarnished silver embroidery, once adorned a man of status, perhaps even a lord, but now it's merely a prop, a disguise to transform you, an actor, into someone else entirely. The fabric is rough in places, rubbed thin where it once pressed against a saddle or a heavy chain of office, a ghost of its former glory. You're crammed into the tiring house, a whirlwind of frantic activity behind the main stage of the globe. Lantern light casts flickering shadows across a chaos of discarded tunics, plumed hats, and hastily powdered faces. A fellow actor, still adjusting his own ill-fitting breeches, bumps into you, muttering a hurried apology as he lunges for a sword belt. There's no time for finesse. You pull at the velvet, trying to settle it, feeling a stitch strain under your arm. A quick, cold fear flashes through you. A costume malfunction during a performance isn't just an embarrassment. It can shatter the fragile illusion, draw unwanted jeers from the crowd, and worse, displease the company manager, leading to a reduction in your meager share of the day's takings. You tug carefully, easing the material, hoping the thread holds for just one more show. Then comes the real ordeal, transforming into the lady you are to portray in the next scene. A tight corset is thrust at you, its laces a tangled mess. You wrestle it on, pulling at the stiff whalebone, the unforgiving garment immediately constricting your chest, making every breath a shallow effort. It's followed by a succession of heavy petticoats and an ornate gown, layers that seem to add pounds to your frame and restrict your natural movements. The final indignity is the wig, a cascade of artfully arranged curls that smells faintly of mutton fat used to hold its shape, heavy and hot on your scalp. You catch a glimpse of your reflection in a shard of broken mirror, a man, undeniably, beneath a ludicrous mountain of silk and powder, a sight that often draws snickers even from your fellow players. The cross-dressing, a necessity of Elizabethan theater where women are forbidden on stage, is a constant low-grade humiliation, a public spectacle that often invites crude jokes and mockery from the rowdier groundlings. You adjust the cumbersome sleeves, feeling the itch of the wig on your neck, the tightness of the corset, the sheer weight of the elaborate dress, the grandeur of the dead nobleman's velvet, now buried beneath layers of feminine frippery, is a stark contrast to your own reality. You, a poor player, existing precariously, covered in finery that isn't truly yours, playing a part that is utterly alien to your own gender, risking ridicule and ruin with every line. This borrowed splendor, you realize, is both your tool and your cage, an ephemeral illusion that hides the brutal truth of your precarious life. The heavy wool of the cloak drapes over your arm, catching on a loose thread, and as you shrug it on, the lingering scent of another man's cologne, a faded, musky spice, hits you, immediately wrapping you in an identity that isn't your own. You adjust the high collar, feeling the rough fabric chafe against your neck, This isn't the light feminine gown you just shed. This is a heavy, masculine swagger, a character of authority, and a certain weariness. Your body still feels the pinch of the corset you ripped off moments ago, but you force it into a different posture, broadening your shoulders, squaring your jaw. The transformation happens not just in the clothes, but in the very core of your being. A quick, almost brutal shedding of one skin for another. You run a hand over the short, cropped wig, feeling the stiffness of the false hair. A deliberate, stark contrast to the flowing curls you wore as the queen. It's glued tight to your scalp, the faint stickiness of the spirit gum, an irritating presence. You catch a glimpse of your reflection in the grimy backstage mirror. A stranger stares back, his eyes still yours, but the rest a carefully constructed facade. The lines of this new character, a gruff, loyal general, tumble through your mind, displacing the eloquent laments of the queen. It's a mental acrobatic feat, a constant battle to keep a dozen different voices, a dozen different lives, separate in your head, each ready to be called upon at a moment's notice. There are no full scripts, remember? Just your cues, and the desperate, hurried memory of how this particular man walks, talks, and carries the weight of his fictional world. A quick shove from a stagehand hurries you towards the wing. The roar of the audience is a visceral thing now, a demanding beast that cares nothing for your internal struggles, only for the flawless continuation of the story. You can already hear the first lines of the scene unfolding on stage, your cue rapidly approaching. You take a deep, shaky breath, trying to anchor yourself in this new persona, to convince not just the audience but yourself that you are this general, this man of duty and blunt words. The cutthroat politics of the company loom, a silent, ever-present pressure. Your performance in this role, how convincingly you inhabit this specific identity, matters. It determines not just your current standing with the playwright, but your future roles, your very share in the company's success. You feel the weight of expectation, the silent judgment of Shakespeare's discerning eye, even from the shadows, stepping into the lights, the heavy cloak swinging with the deliberate stride of the general. You feel the final, complete shift. The past character, the queen, is gone, pushed deep into the recesses of your memory, waiting for her next summons. You are now another man entirely, a vessel for a story. And as you deliver your first line, your voice deeper, more gravelly, you realize that in this life, your own identity is a fleeting thing, constantly dissolving and reforming into the identities of countless others. A performance for survival itself. The first thing you feel is the merciless tightening around your waist. The rough, thick laces of the corset are pulled taut by a hurried dresser, drawing the whalebone stays brutally inward. Your breath hitches, becoming shallow, restricted. It feels like your lungs have shrunk, like a bird trapped in a too small cage, every inhale a desperate struggle against the rigid fabric and bone. The heavy silk of the gown, stiff with embroidery, then falls over your shoulders, adding weight, adding layers that make the air around you feel thick and suffocating. You stand awkwardly, trying to find a balance in this unnatural silhouette, your chest aching with the effort. The smell of cheap rosewater, meant to mask the underlying scent of old sweat and dust from countless performances, makes your nose wrinkle. Then comes the wig. It's a monstrosity of heavy, false curls, smelling faintly of rendered animal fat used to hold its shape, plopped onto your head. The weight is immediate, an oppressive crown that shifts precariously with every movement, threatening to slide askew. You feel the fine powder being dusted onto your face, a chalky mask that hides your stubble but feels alien, itchy. You glance at your reflection in the small, cracked mirror backstage. A grotesque parody of womanhood stares back. Your own face, your own sturdy hands, framed by this elaborate, delicate artifice, a stark contrast that still makes a flush of shame creep up your neck. You are a man playing a woman, and the absurdity, the fundamental wrongness of it in your own mind, is a constant, quiet hum of humiliation beneath the surface. You hear the roars from the pit, the clamor of the groundlings, already growing louder. Some of them will mock, their drunken jests crude and cutting, aimed directly at the obvious male beneath the feminine finery. You force your shoulders back, trying to effect a delicate posture, a graceful sway that feels entirely unnatural, your usual sturdy stride now replaced by a hesitant mincing step. The layers of petticoats, the long skirt, they all conspire against free movement, tripping you, tangling around your legs. You worry about a misstep, a fall, a rip in this precious borrowed costume. A sudden tear, a flash of your male ankle, and the illusion is irrevocably broken, inviting a storm of booze and rotten vegetables. Your throat feels tight, not just from the corset, but from the effort to pitch your voice higher, to soften its edges, to produce the lilting tones of a lady in love. It's a constant physical and mental strain, maintaining the illusion, embodying a woman's fragility and grace, when every fiber of your being screams masculine strength. The physical demands of the other roles you play, the sword fights, the passionate speeches, are forgotten, replaced by this particular brand of torture. The social stigma attached to acting is already heavy, but the added burden of this cross-dressing, considered by many to be an unholy abomination, is a weight that settles deep in your soul. You are not just a performer, but a curiosity, an object of both fascination and disgust, a constant reminder that your art is perpetually teetering on the edge of scandal and ruin. Your throat feels raw, raspy, as if you've swallowed a handful of dry sand. It's a persistent ache, a dull burn that settles deep in your vocal cords, a constant thrumming protest against the unnatural strain you've inflicted upon them all day. You try to clear it, a small, involuntary croak escaping, but it only irritates the soreness further. You suck on a precious, sugar-crusted lozenge, its sweet, faintly medicinal taste, a brief, fleeting comfort against the dryness. This isn't just tiredness from shouting, it's the specific, grating exhaustion of forcing your voice into a higher register, of maintaining the lilting, delicate tones of the ingenue you portray, hour after grueling hour. The corset, still cinched mercilessly tight beneath your gown, presses against your diaphragm, making every breath a shallow, controlled effort. You can't draw the deep, full breaths necessary for powerful projection without risking a seam or, worse, a clumsy, unladylike gasp. So you learn to speak from a smaller, more constricted space, pushing your voice higher, thinner, while still striving for the clarity and resonance demanded by Shakespeare's intricate verse. It's a delicate, painful balancing act, your natural baritone constantly threatening to break through the carefully constructed facade, a jarring masculine tremor in a supposedly feminine lament. You feel the effort in your temples, in the tension that coils like a spring at the back of your jaw. On stage, during the passionate scene, a drunkard in the pit bellows a crude remark about your voice, a slurred insult questioning your authenticity. You flinch internally, but your face remains composed, the learned expression of sweet sorrow unwavering. You push through, forcing a note of delicate anguish into your reply, praying your voice doesn't crack, doesn't betray you. The fear is a cold knot in your stomach. Not just the fear of ridicule, but the deeper terror of displeasing the playwright, of failing to adequately convey the emotion, the beauty that he has poured into these lines. And beyond that, the ever-present anxiety of offending a powerful noble whose sophisticated ear might detect the slightest flaw, the smallest lapse in your performance, leading to whispers, disfavor, and potentially the loss of patronage for the entire company. You remember the last time your voice gave out, reduced to a hoarse whisper mid-speech. The collective gasp from the audience, the bewildered looks, the desperate scramble backstage to find someone to take your place. It's a humiliation that still burns, a memory that fuels your current, desperate effort. Other actors, their faces grimed with sweat and grease paint, offer glances of weary camaraderie from the wings, a shared understanding of this particular vocal torture. They too have felt the burn, the raw scrape of pushing their own voices beyond their natural limits, all for the fleeting illusion, for the few coins that keep the company alive. As the scene draws to a close, and you make your graceful, constrained exit, a wave of profound fatigue washes over you. Your throat aches, a deep, persistent throb. You realize that your voice, this fragile instrument, is constantly on the brink of failure, a battleground where art and survival are fought with every forced breath and every delicate word. The illusion you create is demanding, beautiful, and utterly, brutally exhausting. The sheer force of their collective stench hits you first, a wave of human effluvia rising from the pit below, cloying and inescapable. It's a thick, sour miasma of unwashed bodies pressed too close, the heavy, sweet reek of stale ale, the faint, sickening odor of spilled food and poorly managed waste. It coats the back of your throat, makes your eyes water, and seems to cling to the rough woolen tunic you wear, a constant, visceral reminder of the unruly, teeming humanity that fuels your livelihood. Then comes the roar. It's not a mere sound. It's a living, breathing entity, a monstrous beast of 1,000 voices that surges and recedes, swells into a thunderous approval, or collapses into a terrifying, guttural growl of discontent. You stand on the edge of the stage, the rough planks vibrating beneath your feet, with their stomping, your gaze sweeping across the sea of faces directly below. They are a swirling mass of humanity, eager, fickle, and utterly unpredictable. A half-eaten turnip, already bruised, sails past your head, narrowly missing its target. Another player. You flinch. A sudden jerk of adrenaline, but force yourself to remain in character, your expression unyielding. You know that anything can be thrown. Rotten fruit, vegetable cores, even stones. If their mood turns sour, if your performance fails to captivate, or if a line rubs them the wrong way. The danger is real, physical, and ever-present. A drunk heckler, his face flushed and distorted, thrusts a tankard aloft, bellowing a crude, personal insult aimed directly at your character, a pointed jab at the fact you, a man, are portraying a woman. You meet his gaze for a split second, a flicker of defiance, before quickly turning your attention to your fellow actor, pretending not to hear, not to see. To acknowledge him, to engage, is to invite further chaos, to break the fragile spell of the play, and to risk incurring the wrath of the entire pit. Your heart thumps, a frantic rhythm against your ribs. These are not passive spectators. They are active participants, capable of making or breaking a performance, and often breaking an actor's spirit. You feel the collective tension, the shifting moods of the crowd, as if it were a tangible force. A particularly witty line brings a sudden eruption of laughter and stomping, a wave of warmth that briefly banishes the chill of the unheated theater. But a moment of perceived weakness, a slight hesitation, and the noise becomes an impatient rumble, a low, menacing growl that sends a prickle of fear down your spine. Your next meal, your ability to pay for your cramped lodging, the very future of your company, all of it hangs by the thread of their approval. In this raucous, visceral arena, you realize you are not just performing for an audience. You are contending with a force of nature. Your words, your movements, your very presence are offerings to this unpredictable beast, and your survival depends entirely on your ability to tame its temper, to hold its gaze, and to escape its savage bite, day after brutal day, The blinding afternoon sun, low in the sky, hits you full in the face, a scorching, unwavering spotlight that makes your eyes water. You squint, trying to distinguish the faces in the upper tiers, but they are reduced to dark, indistinct blurs against the fiery orange backdrop. The heat, intensified by the heavy, elaborate costume you're wearing, a velvet gown meant for a noble woman, feels like a suffocating blanket. Sweat trickles down your temples, pooling under the edge of your wig, which already feels like a hot, itchy burden. You can almost taste the dust motes, dancing in the sunbeams, illuminated by the harsh light as they swirl above the unwashed heads of the groundlings. Below you, in the pit, the sea of faces is terrifyingly clear. Hundreds of eyes, unblinking, unyielding, follow your every move, their expressions ranging from rapt attention to bored indifference, from open admiration to barely concealed scorn. You can feel their collective judgment, a palpable force, as you deliver your lines. A sudden glint of light catches your eye. It's a tankard, raised high, belonging to a burly man whose face is contorted with a sneer. He bellows something crude, indistinct in the general din, but the intention is clear, a derisive jab at your portrayal, perhaps even at the scandalous fact of a man playing a woman. You feel a flush of heat rise to your neck, but you hold your pose, your voice unwavering, pushing through the humiliation, willing your face to remain impassive. The pressure of their gaze is relentless. One wrong step, one flubbed line, and their mood could turn violent in an instant. You've seen it before. A sudden volley of rotten apples, a chorus of boos, the entire performance descending into chaos. And worse than the physical threat is the constant, low-burning fear of offending someone important. A noble in a private box, his face shrouded in shadow, could take personal offense at a seemingly innocuous line, twisting its meaning and bringing the wrath of censorship down upon your entire troupe. A whisper to the wrong ear, an accusation of treason, and your precarious life as an actor could end abruptly, violently. Your mouth feels dry, your throat aching, but you project your voice, trying to reach every single ear, every single unforgiving face. The sun's glare, the demanding shouts, the constant threat of a thrown object, it's all part of the brutal daily reality. This isn't merely about entertaining, it's a battle for respect, for survival, for the meager coins that keep you from destitution. In this exposed arena, under the merciless light, you realize that every performance is a desperate negotiation with 1,000 watchful, critical eyes, and you are always, always on trial. The insistent, rhythmic scratch of the master's quill against parchment is the loudest sound in the vast, echoing space of the empty globe. It's a dry, whispering hiss, a constant, unsettling counterpoint to the lines you and your fellow actors are speaking, your voices hushed and uncertain. You feel its presence more than hear it, a physical thrumming in the air, a constant reminder that every syllable you utter, every gesture you make, is being judged, weighed, and potentially altered by the greatest playwright of your age. The smell of the ink, a sharp, metallic tang, drifts subtly from the tiring house where he sits, his face obscured by shadow, his eyes, you imagine, piercing through the gloom, missing nothing. Your stomach tightens into a hard knot as you deliver your lines. You're deep into a crucial scene, a passionate exchange, and the words, so carefully memorized from your partial cue script, feel suddenly inadequate, flimsy, under the invisible scrutiny of his pen. You try to infuse your voice with the intended emotion, to give life to the character, but the tension in the air is thick, stifling, a cloak that makes genuine feeling almost impossible. Every pause in your speech, every moment of silence from your fellow actor, seems elongated, amplified, filled with the potential for that telltale scratch to signify a change, a judgment, a dismissal. You glance across the stage at another player, a veteran whose brow is furrowed with barely concealed anxiety. He catches your eye, a brief, shared moment of silent dread. You both know the stakes. A single flourish of that quill, a few hastily scribbled changes, and your painstakingly memorized lines could be altered, cut entirely, or even reassigned to another actor. Gaining Shakespeare's favor, earning a prominent role in his new works, is the driving ambition, the constant, gnawing desire that pushes you through the relentless physical and mental demands of this life. But losing it, falling from his grace, means being relegated to minor parts, to the back of the stage, to the very edge of the company's precarious existence. The pressure is a physical weight on your chest. You stumble slightly over a word, a tiny hesitation, and you immediately feel a cold sweat prickle your skin. Did he notice? Will the quill pause, then descend to strike out your moment, to mark your perceived inadequacy? You quickly recover, forcing the words out with renewed vigor, hoping to bury the error under a wave of dramatic intensity. The politics here are as cutthroat as any court intrigue, played out with words and delivery, judged by a man whose genius is undeniable, but whose expectations are equally unforgiving. You realize that in this fragile world, your entire future, your very livelihood, hangs on the precise rhythm of that quill. It's a cruel game, where your talent is constantly under review, and the silent scratch of a pen holds more power than the loudest applause, capable of shaping or shattering your destiny with quiet, absolute authority. The rustle of the new parchment, crisp and slightly stiff, sounds unnaturally loud as it's pressed into your hand. It's warm from the playwright's grip, and a faint, fresh scent of iron gall ink wafts up, a promise and a threat. You glance down, your eyes instantly darting to the hastily scrawled lines, seeing new words, entirely unfamiliar, that now belong to your character. The master, Shakespeare himself, stands before you, his gaze sharp, assessing. His voice, a low, resonant rumble, speaks the lines aloud once, precisely, slowly, each word a command, a challenge, an honor bestowed. You feel a thrill, a surge of adrenaline, mixed with a chilling terror that settles deep in your gut. This isn't just new dialogue. It's an unexpected gift, a sign of his favor, a crucial nod in the cutthroat politics of the company. It means he believes in your capacity, sees potential in your performance, and that for now, you hold a coveted spot in his mind. But the honor is immediately overshadowed by the crushing weight of expectation. There's no time, not truly. The next scene is already being called, the distant murmur of the crowd a hungry beast demanding its next course. You must memorize these words, these intricate phrases within minutes, integrate them seamlessly into the sprawling tapestry of the play, all while performing other roles, managing costume changes, and avoiding the unpredictable temper of the audience. You force your mind to work, to create new pathways in the internal memory palace you've painstakingly built for countless other roles. You mouth the words silently, tasting their unfamiliar rhythm, trying to absorb them through sheer will. Around you, the bustling chaos of the backstage area seems to sharpen. You catch fleeting glances from other actors. Some are quick, congratulatory nods of genuine camaraderie. Others are sharp, envious stares, their own desire for such a distinction a palpable, bitter tang in the air. You know they watch, assessing whether you'll falter, whether this brief moment of favor will crumble under the immense pressure. The ink on the parchment seems to burn into your fingertips, a physical manifestation of the urgency. You try to anchor the new lines with imagined gestures, specific movements, anything to make them stick. The danger of a misstep, a forgotten word, is amplified tenfold. To stumble now, after being singled out by the bard himself, would be more than just a momentary lapse. It would be a profound betrayal of his trust, a fall from grace that could relegate you to the lowest ranks, or even out of the company entirely. The terror of such a failure battles with the fierce pride bubbling within you. You realize that this small, ink-stained piece of parchment holds your immediate destiny. It's a testament to both the brutal demands and the fleeting, intoxicating rewards of this life. To be chosen, to be given new words from the Master, is a heavy honor, a terrifying privilege that demands absolute, instantaneous perfection, for your very survival depends on it. The delicate glass goblet feels impossibly light in your calloused hand, utterly alien compared to the rough wooden tankards you're accustomed to. You raise it, and the rich, complex aroma of spiced wine, heavy with cinnamon, clove, and something subtly floral, wafts up, a scent that speaks of warmth and luxury utterly unfamiliar to your daily existence. You take a tentative sip. The taste is startling, a burst of intense sweetness, followed by a slow, lingering burn of exotic spices on your tongue. It's a flavor from another world, a world of refinement and abundance, a stark contrast to the thin, sour ale and meager gruel that usually constitute your meals. You're standing awkwardly in the opulent antechamber of a powerful noble, the air thick with the scent of beeswax polish and expensive perfumes. Your rough woolen doublet feels suddenly coarse against your skin. Your hands, still faintly grimy from backstage, feel impossibly large and out of place. Around you, elegantly dressed courtiers chatter in hushed tones, their eyes, you feel, occasionally flicking towards you, assessing, judging, with a casual indifference that stings more than any direct insult. You are tolerated here, briefly, a necessary entertainment, but never truly accepted as one of their own. The social stigma of being an actor, a mere player, a vagabond, hangs heavy in the air, palpable as the rich tapestries adorning the walls. The noble, whose favor your company desperately seeks, nods benignly at you, his smile thin and aristocratic. He offers a compliment about your performance, his voice smooth, distant. You murmur a humble reply, choosing your words with excruciating care, aware that one wrong phrase, one unintentional slight, could spell disaster. His patronage, his ongoing support, is the fragile thread upon which your company's very existence often hangs. Without it, you could easily find yourself struggling even more desperately, performing in muddy village squares, sleeping in barns, or even disbanded entirely. The image of plague closures, the sudden cessation of all theater, leaving you penniless and starving, flashes through your mind, a constant, low-level dread. You take another small sip of the wine, trying to appear at ease, to mimic the nonchalant grace of the courtiers around you, but every muscle in your body feels stiff, alert. The sweetness of the wine feels almost cloying now, a physical manifestation of the precariousness of this moment. You are performing again, even off stage, a more subtle, dangerous act of diplomacy and self-preservation. The taste of the wine, so luxurious, so fleeting, is a stark reminder of the vast chasm between your world and theirs, a world you momentarily touch, but can never truly inhabit. The polished stone floor beneath your worn boots feels unnervingly cold, sending a subtle shiver up your spine despite the warmth radiating from the grand fireplace across the opulent chamber. You stand perfectly still, your posture carefully cultivated, a delicate balance of respectful deference and quiet dignity. The heavy, formal doublet you wear, borrowed from the company's limited costume stores, feels stiff, almost suffocating, against your skin, its coarse fabric a constant, subtle irritant. Your senses are heightened, every rustle of silk, every hushed laugh from the gathered courtiers, every fleeting glance in your direction, registered with a sharp, almost painful clarity. You are acutely aware of the rich, heady scent of exotic perfumes and pomades that permeates the air, a world away from the sweat and sawdust of the globe. Your eyes, trained to hold 1,000 gazes, carefully avoid direct contact with the powerful noble who stands before you, his attention a fleeting, precious commodity. You murmur a few carefully chosen words of gratitude, of humble appreciation for his presence at last night's performance, his casual nod of acknowledgement, a signal that you've navigated this treacherous social minefield, at least for now. Every syllable is weighted, every gesture calculated, a meticulous performance far more nuanced and demanding than any role on stage. You are walking a tightrope, you realize, between sincere appreciation and obsequious flattery, knowing that a single misstep could lead to irritation, disinterest, or worse, outright offense. His favor is not just a luxury, it's a shield, protecting your company from the ever-present threat of censorship, from the meddling of rival troops, and from the swift, arbitrary whims of official displeasure. You feel the pressure of his casual power, the sense that your entire livelihood, the very breath in your lungs, is held in the palm of his manicured hand. The unspoken threat of a plague closure, or the devastating financial ruin it brings, looms large in your mind, a constant, low-burning fear that only a steady patron can alleviate. You recall the stories of other companies, once prosperous, now scattered and begging, their noble protectors having grown weary, or worse, finding themselves embroiled in political disputes that left their players vulnerable. Your mind races, replaying your performance from yesterday, searching for any line, any gesture that might have been misinterpreted, twisted into a political slight or an unintended insult. The precariousness of your position, the fundamental indignity of relying on the changing moods of such a powerful figure, burns with a quiet heat beneath your composed exterior. As he turns to address another courtier, dismissing you with a subtle inclination of his head, you feel a release of tension, a barely perceptible exhale. You offer a final, respectful bow, your gaze still deferential, before retreating slowly, melting back into the periphery of the room. The brief encounter has been physically and mentally draining, a profound performance of humility and dependence. You realize that your life as an actor isn't just about mastering the stage. It's about mastering the delicate, often humiliating, art of seeking and maintaining patronage. A tightrope walk, where your very existence hangs on the fickle thread of another man's fleeting approval. The silence hits you first, a profound, unnerving absence that seems to absorb all other sound. The globe, usually a roaring cauldron of voices, laughter, and the ceaseless clamor of 1,000 bustling souls, is utterly, terrifyingly still. No distant shouts from the groundlings, no vendors hawking their wares, no frantic whispers from backstage, just the faint, mournful creak of settling timbers, and the soft, almost imperceptible rustle of dust motes dancing in the idle shafts of sunlight. It's a silence that isn't peaceful. It's heavy, suffocating, a physical weight that presses down on your chest, stealing your breath more effectively than any corset. You stand on the deserted stage, the rough-hewn planks cool and lifeless beneath your worn boots. The familiar scent of stale ale, human sweat, and vibrant grease paint has vanished, replaced by the damp, woody smell of neglect, a faint mustiness that whispers of things forgotten and abandoned. You run a hand over a dusty railing, feeling the fine grit cling to your fingertips, a stark contrast to the polished surfaces that once shone under the press of eager hands. The very air feels thin, empty, as if the theater itself is holding its breath, waiting for a life that may never return. The proclamation, nailed to the city gates just yesterday, still rings in your ears, its stark words echoing like a death knell. All public gatherings, forbidden, due to the pestilence. Plague. The word itself is a cold blade, striking not just at life, but at your very livelihood. You are penniless. The reality of it hits you with a force that eclipses any stage blow. Your meager earnings, always fluctuating with the whims of the crowd, have evaporated overnight. There are no more roles, no more lines to memorize, no more applause, no more coins trickling into your hand. The desperate calculations begin in your mind. How long can your scant savings last? How many hungry days until the pestilence passes, if it ever does? You think of your fellow actors scattered across the city, each facing the same stark, terrifying prospect, their faces etched with the same fear of destitution. The silence here is far more potent than any roar. It's the silence of lost work, of imminent starvation, of a future abruptly snatched away. The constant fear of offending powerful nobles, of rivals sabotaging your performance, all those anxieties that once consumed your waking hours, now seem almost trivial in the face of this raw, primal terror. Your hand clenches, feeling the smooth, cold wood of the stage railing. This isn't just a theater, you realize. It's an empty shell, a tomb for your ambitions, a stark, silent monument to the fragility of your existence. In this deafening stillness, you understand that an actor's greatest enemy isn't a bad performance or a violent audience, but the quiet, creeping death that steals away the stage itself, leaving you with nothing but the chilling echo of what once was. The sharp, resinous scent of rosemary is almost suffocating, clinging to your nostrils, overpowering the usual London stench of unwashed bodies and horse dung. You hold a sprig of it to your nose, pressing it gently, hoping its supposed protective power is more than just a wives' tale. It's not just rosemary. You detect the bitter tang of rue, the faint, acrid smell of burning pitch from braziers lit in deserted alleyways, all attempts to purify the air, to ward off the invisible killer. But beneath these forced, herbal perfumes, you can still perceive the chilling, metallic undertone of sickness, of fear, a smell that seems to seep from the very stones of the deserted city. The streets, usually a teeming river of humanity, are eerily quiet. Footsteps echo unnaturally loud on the cobblestones as you walk, your own boots making a jarring sound in the oppressive silence. Houses stand shuttered, their windows like vacant eyes. And then you see them, the grim red crosses daubed crudely on countless doors, each one a stark, undeniable declaration of death and contagion within. Above them, often, the chilling plea, "Lord, have mercy on us." You instinctively quicken your pace past these marked homes, your heart thumping a frantic rhythm against your ribs, a drumbeat of pure, unadulterated terror. No one lingers. Faces are averted, eyes downcast, everyone a potential carrier, everyone a potential victim. The fear is a palpable presence, a thick, suffocating blanket that smothers any other emotion. You pull your threadbare cloak tighter, not just against the chill of the unseasonably cold wind, but against the invisible threat that seems to permeate every breath you take. Your stomach clenches with the familiar pang of hunger. The theaters are closed, silenced by the pestilence, leaving you and your fellow actors utterly penniless. The coin you earned, already scarce, is dwindled to nothing, replaced by an empty purse and a gnawing dread. You catch a glimpse of a gaunt figure, hurrying past, clutching a small, bundled possession, their face hollowed by hunger and terror. You recognize the look. It's the face of a desperate man, not unlike your own. The silence of this plague-ridden city is far more terrifying than the loudest roar of an angry audience. It's a silence of life suspended, of dreams shattered, of a world on the brink of collapse. The vibrant spectacle of the stage, the intricate dance of words and emotion, feels a million miles away, a forgotten luxury in this grim reality. You realize that in this city of red crosses, your biggest role isn't on a stage, but in the desperate daily act of simply staying alive, clutching a sprig of rosemary, and praying that the invisible hand of fate passes you by. The precariousness of an actor's life, once a challenging thrill, is now a brutal, terrifying reality, stripped bare of all artifice, reduced to the raw, primal urge to survive. The distant rumble of applause is like a sharp jab to your gut, a sour, sickening taste in your mouth. It's not for you, not for your company. It's coming from the playhouse across the river, from the Admiral's men, your fiercest rivals. Each surge of their audience's roar is a physical blow, a reminder of their success, their overflowing coffers, their burgeoning fame, while your own company scrapes by, fighting for every penny, every patron. The sound is a cruel taunt, an echo of the brutal competition that dictates your very existence, a constant, low-burning jealousy that threatens to consume you. You stand backstage at the Globe, the air thick with the smell of stale beer from spilled tankards and the lingering scent of old grease paint. You nervously adjust the buckle on your worn leather boot, your gaze fixed on the entrance to the tiring house, waiting for your cue. Every face around you is grim, tense, etched with the same resentment, the same anxious hope that this performance, your performance, will somehow eclipse theirs. You hear whispers from the stagehands, relaying tales of their rivals, latest triumphs, their new costumes, their rumored acquisition of a brilliant new playwright. Each story feels like a small stab, a tightening of the knot in your stomach. The competition isn't just about art, it's a raw, primal struggle for survival. More patrons for them means fewer for you. More favor from powerful nobles showered upon the admiral's men means less for your troupe, leaving you more vulnerable to censorship, to dwindling funds, to the ever-present threat of plague closures that could leave you utterly penniless. You remember the rumor of a rival company spreading false tales about your leading lady, a boy actor, implying scandalous behavior, hoping to drive away the more conservative audience members. Such malicious sabotage is a constant, shadowy threat, a reminder that loyalty and fairness are luxuries rarely afforded in this cutthroat world. You feel the collective tension of your company, a fragile alliance forged in shared hardship and ambition. A stern glance from your company manager reinforces the urgency. You must be brilliant, flawless, unforgettable. There is no room for error, no space for mediocrity. Not when the roar of the opposition is so clearly audible, so undeniably triumphant. You take a deep, shaky breath, trying to steady your racing heart. The distant thunder of their applause is a catalyst, igniting a fierce determination, a desperate need to prove your own worth, to snatch a sliver of their glory, to ensure that your own company survives another day, another performance, another brutal season. In this world you realize, the art of acting is inextricably woven with the art of war. Every performance is a battle for hearts and minds, for survival itself, fought not with swords but with words, and with the raw, desperate ambition fueled by the deafening applause of your rivals. The crisp, cool parchment of your personal cue script feels almost alive in your hand, a precious, fragile thing you guard with a fierce, almost obsessive grip. You fold it quickly, tucking it deep inside your doublet, feeling the thin edges press against your ribs. It's not just words etched on paper, it's your livelihood, your company's unique treasure, a secret held in the precarious memories of a dozen actors. The air backstage, usually thick with the scent of grease paint and nervous energy, is also laced with a constant low thrum of suspicion, a paranoia as potent as any stage poison. You catch the wary glance of an older player, his eyes darting towards a newcomer, a young man who lingers a little too long near the master's desk, perhaps lingering with an ear too open, a hand too eager to snatch. Every fresh face is a potential spy, every stranger a possible agent of the rival companies, lurking, waiting to pirate Shakespeare's latest triumph. You remember the whispers, the chilling tales of stolen and surreptitious copies, of entire plays performed by other troupes before your own could even properly debut, words twisted, scenes butchered, the magic diluted. The thought sends a cold spike of fear through your chest. To lose a play, especially one of the bard's new creations, isn't just a blow to pride, it's economic ruin. It means fewer patrons flocking to the Globe, fewer coins in the company's precarious coffers, and, eventually, no pay for you, no food for your table. Your hands, usually deft with costume changes and swordplay, tremble slightly as you imagine the audacity, the ruthless cunning of such a theft. The words are currency, more valuable than any prop, more crucial than any elaborate costume, and infinitely easier to steal. You see the master, Shakespeare himself, his brow furrowed, casting a sharp, knowing glance at the huddle of players. He guards his genius fiercely, but even his genius is vulnerable to the unscrupulous. You glance at your own. Cue script, again, a mere fragment of the whole, a deliberate measure to prevent any single actor from having enough information to betray the entire work. It's a testament to the mistrust, the constant struggle against the rapacious appetites of competing theaters. The very air seems to hum with this silent battle, a relentless war waged with words and whispers. You realize that your art, this intricate tapestry of storytelling, exists on a knife's edge, constantly threatened not just by censors or disease, but by the relentless, invisible hunger of rivals. Your words are not truly yours, you understand. They are a shared, precarious secret, always at risk of being snatched, twisted, and cheapened, leaving you with nothing but the chilling echo of what could have been. The chill seeps into your bones, not just from the relentless rain, but from the sheer, sucking pull of the mud. Each step is a struggle, your worn leather boots sinking deep into the viscous mire, then emerging with a wet, squelching sound, heavier than before. The road, barely more than a rutted track, stretches endlessly before you, a dark, churning ribbon of muck under a sky the color of bruised lead. The rain is a constant, cold presence, lashing down in sheets, plastering your hair to your forehead, seeping through the flimsy felt of your hat and the coarse wool of your cloak. Your clothes, already damp and smelling faintly of stale sweat and wet earth, cling uncomfortably to your skin. You can taste the cold, metallic tang of the rain on your lips, mixed with the earthy grit that splatters up from the path. Your muscles ache, a dull, pervasive throb in your calves and thighs, weary from miles of relentless trudging. You carry your meager pack, containing a change of clothes and your precious, dog-eared cue script, its weight, a constant burden on your already stooped shoulders. Ahead, the cart, carrying the company's costumes and props, creaks ominously, its wheels half submerged in a deep rut, threatening to become permanently lodged. You hear the strained grunts of the younger players pushing at its muddy sides, their voices muffled by the ceaseless downpour. The touring life, a forced exodus from London due to plague closures, is a grim, relentless march. Each village, each muddy town square, is a gamble, a hope for a few pence from an indifferent crowd, a promise of a dry barn to sleep in. You glance at your fellow actors, their faces grim, their shoulders hunched against the elements. Their usual theatrical swagger is gone, replaced by a quiet, determined endurance. There's no glamour here, no thunderous applause, just the harsh reality of the road, the incessant wetness, and the gnawing uncertainty of the next meal. A sudden gust of wind whips through the open fields, chilling you to the bone, sending a fresh deluge of rain cascading over your face. You feel the constant fear, a low burning ember in your gut, that this terrible weather will deter even the most eager villagers, leaving you to perform to an empty square, further diminishing your already precarious earnings. The social stigma of being an actor, a vagabond, a strolling player, is amplified here, away from the relative sophistication of London. You are often eyed with suspicion, sometimes outright contempt, by the locals, tolerated only for the fleeting entertainment you might provide. In this unending, muddy journey, you realize that survival isn't about dramatic flair or eloquent speeches, but about sheer, brutal perseverance. It's about putting one foot in front of the other, day after grueling day, through the sucking mire and endless rain, all for the faint hope of a few coins and the chance to perform again, even if it's just to a handful of curious, rain-soaked villagers. The cloying scent of damp peat smoke hangs heavy in the crisp autumn air, a smell utterly foreign to the bustling streets of London, mingling with the sharp tang of something metallic from a distant smithy. Your boots crunch on frozen gravel as you finally step into the market square of this unfamiliar village, the stubborn mud from the endless road clinging relentlessly to the leather, a tangible reminder of the miles you've trudged. Immediately you feel it. The eyes. They're not the curious, bustling gazes of a city crowd, eager for spectacle. These are slow, deliberate stares, cold and unwelcoming, filled with a potent mixture of distrust and thinly veiled contempt. You feel the collective weight of their judgment, a palpable chill that bites deeper than the crisp wind whipping around your threadbare cloak. Children, usually quick to gather around strangers in hopes of a coin or a smile, cling tightly to their mothers, voluminous skirts, their faces wide-eyed and wary as you pass. You see them whisper, their heads turning in unison, their gestures subtle but unmistakably pointed. Vagabonds, you imagine them muttering, or worse, rogues. Their local dialect making the words sound even more harsh, more condemning. The label settles on your weary shoulders, like another heavy, unwelcome layer, a stark contrast to the noble silks you sometimes wear on stage. You try to meet a gaze, to offer a polite, deferential nod, but eyes immediately drop or turn sharply away, a clear, unspoken message that your kind, the strolling players, are tolerated here, perhaps, but certainly not welcomed, never truly accepted. Your worn traveling clothes, stained with the indelible mud of 100 different roads, mark you as an outsider, a wanderer, someone without a fixed home or an honest trade. The grand, heroic characters you inhabit on stage, the kings and queens, the passionate lovers, the valiant warriors, all vanish in these harsh moments of stark reality, leaving only the vulnerable, socially outcast actor. You clutch the small, rough canvas bag containing your few precious belongings, feeling a sudden raw defensiveness, a prickle of shame, despite knowing the necessity of your journey. This isn't just another village square, another temporary stage. It's a place where your very existence, your chosen profession, is openly questioned, scorned, and deemed disreputable. The inviting glow of the inn's light, spilling faintly from across the square, feels like a distant, perhaps unattainable comfort, a privilege you might not be afforded, lest your presence taint their respectable establishment. The persistent fear of being turned away, of finding no audience for your plays, of being left to sleep rough under a cold, unfamiliar hedge, is a cold, tight knot that constantly twists in your stomach, a chilling echo of the constant precariousness of your life. You realize that for all the eloquent, profound words you speak on stage, and for all the temporary worlds you bring to life, off it, you are often defined by the contempt and suspicion in a stranger's eyes. It's a bitter truth, a constant reminder that for an actor, true belonging, true acceptance, is a fickle, elusive thing, always just beyond your reach, forever shadowed by the social stigma of your trade. The cold, heavy weight of the 2 shillings in your palm is a stark reality, far more tangible than any fleeting applause. The metal feels smooth, worn, almost insignificant, yet it represents the culmination of another grueling week. Countless lines memorized, multiple roles performed, the humiliation of corsets and wigs endured, hecklers braved, and miles of muddy road traversed. You stare at the coins, feeling their small, meager heft, a brutal tally of your worth in this precarious world. It's enough for a few loaves of bread, perhaps a measure of cheap ale, and a corner in a shared, drafty room, but little else. The promised glory, the grand narratives you conjure on stage, seem a universe away from this cold, hard, meager truth. The company manager, his face etched with the same weariness that pervades your own, nods curtly as he drops the coins into your outstretched hand. He offers no words of encouragement, no praise for your efforts. Such niceties are luxuries rarely afforded. His eyes, you feel, are already calculating the next performance, the next village, the next desperate gamble for coins. You see the same resigned acceptance in the faces of your fellow actors as they receive their own shares, their hands closing quickly over the paltry sums. There's no discussion, no complaint. To do so would be to invite scorn, or worse, to find yourself without even this small pittance next week. The competition is too fierce, the threat of destitution too close, to risk angering the man who holds the purse strings. Your stomach rumbles, a hollow ache that has become a constant companion. You think of the meager meal you ate last night, a thin gruel, and the promise of a somewhat more substantial one, if you're lucky, tonight. The physical demands of performing multiple roles per day, the strain on your voice, the constant aches in your muscles, all weigh heavily on your body. These coins are the fuel, the bare necessity that keeps you moving, keeps you performing, keeps you from succumbing to the crushing poverty that hovers constantly at your heels. You remember the last time a plague closure emptied the theaters, how you had to beg for scraps, how the hunger gnawed at your insides, a fear that still grips you whenever your purse feels too light. You carefully tuck the shillings into a small hidden pouch within your doublet, feeling the faint, reassuring weight against your chest. It's a fragile security, a temporary reprieve from the gnawing anxiety. You realize that for all the magic you create on stage, the raw reality of your life as an actor boils down to these few cold, hard coins. They are the measure of your survival, the only thing separating you from utter destitution, and the constant, grim reminder of the brutal bargain you strike every day. Your body, your voice, your very spirit, traded for just enough to simply exist. The faint, persistent smell of cold parchment and expensive lamp oil hangs in the air around the small, heavy oak table, a scent you associate with the company's inner sanctum. Your own few shillings, freshly counted and now tucked deep into your pocket, feel like pebbles compared to the solid, satisfying thud of the company's ledger closing. You see the subtle, almost imperceptible way the company's shareholders, Master Shakespeare the Burbages, carry themselves even in the cramped confines of a touring inn. Their shoulders are a fraction less hunched against the cold, their gazes a touch more assured, their fine woolens of a slightly better weave than your own worn, patched tunic. This isn't just about the coins in their purse. It's about the security of ownership, a stability you, as a hired man, can only dream of. You watch as a servant brings them a small, steaming dish of spiced pigeon pie, the rich aroma, a cruel contrast to the meager, cold bread and thin ale you'll consume tonight. It's a stark, visceral reminder of the gulf that separates you. Your body aches from performing multiple roles today. A fierce soldier, then a delicate maiden in a tight corset, now a wise old counselor. Each transformation a drain on your physical and mental reserves, all for a daily wage that barely keeps the wolf from the door. Their comfort, their relative ease, is built upon the relentless sweat and strained voices of actors like you, whose efforts fill the globe's pit and the touring squares, whose words are the very lifeblood of their enterprise. The politics of the company are played at their level, in hushed conversations over those richer suppers, in decisions about new plays, new roles, and who will be favored with the bard's next masterpiece. You are merely a tool, a voice, a body to inhabit the characters, but they are the hands that steer the ship, determining its course, deciding who remains aboard and who is cast adrift. When the threat of censorship looms, or whispers of plague closures bring a cold dread to your stomach, you know their fear is cushioned by financial reserves, by the weight of their investments. For you, such threats mean instant, absolute destitution, leaving you penniless, a vagabond with nowhere to turn. You recall the sting of being referred to as a player, a sana, vagabond by a haughty town councillor, while shareholders, even if they act, retain a measure of respect through their property and wealth. You feel the constant, low-burning aspiration to bridge that gulf, to somehow, someday, earn enough to buy a share, to become a master of your own fate rather than a mere pawn in theirs. But the path is steep, perilous, and often feels impossibly distant. The sheer volume of lines you memorize, the constant physical demands, the humiliation of playing women's parts under the jeering gaze of drunk hecklers. It all seems to lead to this: a hand-to-mouth existence, while the owners reap the greater rewards, their lives anchored by the very profits you help create. You realize that in this ruthless world of Elizabethan theater, true survival isn't just about enduring the stage, but about navigating the vast, unyielding divide between those who are merely hired to perform and those who own the very stage upon which your precarious life is acted out, forever dictating your fate. The sudden, ringing silence hits you like a physical blow, a deafening absence that makes your ears ache. Moments ago, this very tiring house was a chaotic symphony of hurried whispers, rustling silks, the dull thud of discarded boots, and the frantic adjustments of wigs. Now it's utterly, terrifyingly still. The clamor of the audience, the final, surging roar of applause, has faded into a distant, muffled echo, and even the last shouts of your fellow actors have vanished as they spill out into the London night, leaving you alone in the sudden void. The air, thick with the lingering scent of stale sweat, cheap grease paint, and the metallic tang of costume dye, feels cold and empty. You can still taste the dry, chalky powder on your tongue from your last transformation. Your own breath sounds impossibly loud in your ears, ragged from the multiple roles you've just performed. You shed the final layers of your elaborate costume, the heavy velvet doublet falling to the floor with a soft, lifeless thud. The stiff corset, a torture device you endured as the demure maiden, lies crumpled in a corner, its whalebone stays seeming to mock your momentary relief. Every muscle in your body protests with a dull, pervasive ache, a constant hum from the energetic sword fights, the vigorous gestures, and the strained vocal projections of the day. You run a hand over your face, wiping away the remnants of makeup, feeling the rough texture of your own skin, a stark contrast to the smooth, powdered mask you wore for hours. The quiet, though initially a relief, soon begins to press in, magnifying other, less immediate anxieties. Your mind, usually a chaotic archive of lines and cues, now fills with a different kind of pressure. You think of the meager coins you'll receive for this week's tireless efforts, barely enough to stave off the gnawing hunger. The memory of a subtle glance from a rival actor earlier today, a calculated, predatory look, resurfaces, a chilling reminder of the constant, brutal competition that dictates your livelihood. The silence here in the tiring house, after the final, fading applause, is not truly peaceful. It's a charged stillness, pregnant with the precariousness of your existence. It's the sound of the uncertain future, of the potential plague closure that could empty this space indefinitely, leaving you utterly penniless. It's the quiet dread of accidentally offending a powerful noble with an ill-chosen line, a fear that never truly dissipates. You glance around the dimly lit space, at the discarded props, the painted backdrops leaning against the wall like silent sentinels. This is where the illusion is born, and where it dies, day after day, leaving you with only the echoes of your performance and the stark reality of your insecure life. You realize that in these moments of profound quiet, stripped of your costume and character, the real, raw truth of being an actor becomes clearest. It's a life defined by fleeting applause and enduring vulnerability, a constant, silent battle for survival, fought long after the stage lights dim, and the audience disperses into the echoing night. The scent of stale sweat and grease paint, usually an anonymous backstage aroma, now seems profoundly personal. Clinging to you like a second skin, you rip off the heavy, false white beard, feeling the stickiness of the spirit gum on your jaw, a small, welcome pain. But the rage, the profound, gut-wrenching despair of King Lear, still churns in your stomach, a phantom weight pressing down on your chest, refusing to dissipate with the removal of your costume. The last, mournful cries of the old king, his madness echoing across the vast globe, seem to linger in your own throat, making your vocal cords feel raw and scraped, even though you've just delivered your final, exhausted bow. You stumble through the hurried process of shedding the elaborate, heavy robes of Lear, the rich, fur-trimmed velvet falling in a heap around your feet, revealing your rough woolen doublet beneath. Each discarded layer feels like a burden lifted, yet the old king's grief still hums in your veins, a persistent tremor that makes your hands shake slightly as you unlace your boots. Your body aches with a pervasive, deep fatigue, not just from the vigorous, almost violent movements demanded by the role, but from the sheer emotional expenditure of embodying such a monumental sorrow. You are no longer on the storm-swept heath, but the cold, damp air of the tiring house still feels like a physical manifestation of Lear's despair. The silence here is profound, startling after the thunderous applause that just moments ago filled the air, now a fading echo in your ears. You hear only the frantic scurry of a mouse in the corner, the soft rustle of a discarded banner, but in your mind, the storm still rages, the desperate pleas, the heartbreaking lament for Cordelia, all replay with an unbearable vividness. It's a terrifying truth of this life. You don't merely perform these characters, you become them. You absorb their pain, their madness, their overwhelming sadness, and then, after the curtain falls, you are expected to simply shed it, to become yourself again, a common player, ready for the next role, the next brutal day. You see your own reflection in a small, cracked mirror, a face streaked with sweat and remnants of grease paint, eyes still wide, haunted by the specter of the king's madness. The transformation from an all-powerful monarch to a humble actor, struggling for his next meal, feels impossible, a chasm too wide to bridge. You feel the sharp contrast between the grandness of the words you just spoke and the precariousness of your own life, a constant, gnawing anxiety that Lear's fate could, in a different form, easily become your own if plague descends or noble favor fades. In these quiet, solitary moments after such a performance, you realize that the greatest challenge isn't just to embody a character like Lear, but to survive its lingering ghost. You carry these lives within you, a heavy, unseen burden, constantly battling to reclaim your own identity, only to give it away again tomorrow, a testament to the brutal, beautiful demands of your craft. The faint, acrid smell of the censor's ink hits you first, a sharp chemical tang that cuts through the usual backstage smells of sweat and grease paint. You hold the freshly returned cue script in your trembling hands, your eyes fixed on the lines, now brutally disfigured. A thick, watery smear of red ink obliterates entire phrases, sometimes whole speeches, rendering them unreadable. A violent cancellation of words you had painstakingly committed to memory. The paper itself feels fragile, damp where the heavy ink has been applied, as if the very essence of the play has been bled out, leaving gaping, silent wounds. A cold dread spreads through your chest, a familiar tightening that no amount of stage courage can dispel. These aren't just erased words. They are echoes of danger, grim pronouncements from an unseen power that dictates what can and cannot be said. You remember the rumor that flew through the company last week. A rival troupe, shut down for a fortnight because of a seditious line, one carelessly uttered by an actor who thought it harmless. The threat of treason, a single wrong word inviting the wrath of the crown, feels terrifyingly real, etched in the watery red streaks on the page. Your stomach clenches, a knot of fear and apprehension. You quickly scan your remaining lines, frantically trying to readapt, to understand how the censored passages alter the meaning, the rhythm, the very heart of the scene. There's no time for full rehearsals, not truly. You must now reconstruct your performance around these gaping holes, find new ways to convey emotion and intent without the crucial words, all while the master, Shakespeare himself, stands nearby, his gaze sharp, assessing. You see other actors in the crowded tiring house, their faces pale, their own scripts clutched tightly, their eyes darting to the offending pages, the same silent fear mirrored in their expressions. A hurried whisper from a fellow player about the censor's mood, his recent severity, does nothing to ease your anxiety. The pressure is immense. To stumble on stage now, to accidentally speak a redacted line, could bring catastrophic consequences not just for you, but for the entire company. The theater could be shut down, your livelihood snatched away, leaving you utterly penniless, exposed to the raw, unyielding streets of London. The constant fear of offending powerful nobles, whose sensitive ears might find offense even in the silence where words once were, is a shadow that never truly lifts. You realize that your voice, your memory, your very art, exists under a constant, unseen threat, perpetually policed by powers beyond your control. You gently rub the raw, red smear on the page, feeling its grainy texture, a stark reminder of the fragile line you walk. In this world you realize, words are not just tools of art, they are dangerous weapons, capable of both enchanting and destroying, and your very survival depends on knowing which ones to speak and which to leave utterly, terrifyingly silent. The cold, metallic taste of fear is suddenly, undeniably present on your tongue, a sharp tang that makes your mouth go dry. It's not the chill of the tiring house, nor the lingering smell of stale grease paint, but something deeper, more primal. You stand in the shadows of the wings, your heart hammering a frantic rhythm against your ribs, mimicking the distant, ominous clang of a bell you imagine ringing from the tower. A line, a single potent phrase you were about to deliver in the next scene has been whispered to you by a frantic stagehand, a new, urgent warning. It has been deemed dangerous, too close to a recent political upheaval, too open to misinterpretation by ears eager to find offense. The script, your very cue, suddenly feels like a burning brand in your hand, its words no longer merely art, but potential weapons. You can almost feel the damp, inescapable stones of the Tower of London. Imagine the chill of its cells, the heavy silence that descends upon those accused of treason. Not just penniless, not just disgraced, but utterly lost to the world, your voice silenced forever, your body imprisoned. The very thought sends a profound tremor through your limbs, a chilling reminder that your art, your chosen life, hangs by the most fragile of threads, a single misspoken word away from utter annihilation. You glance at the faces of your fellow actors in the dim light backstage, their eyes wide with the same unspoken terror. They too have heard the whispers, seen the subtle signs, the nervous glances exchanged when a certain noble takes his seat in the galleries, his reputation for harsh judgment preceding him. Every word you speak on stage, even those seemingly innocuous, is a gamble, a perilous negotiation between the demands of the play and the hidden dangers of the real world. You must constantly filter, adjust, weigh the consequences of every inflection, every emphasis, trying to divine the unseen political currents that shift with the Queen's mood, with the latest court intrigue, with the ever-present rivalry between powerful factions. The roar of the audience, usually a comforting blanket, now sounds like a hungry beast, its unpredictable whims suddenly overshadowed by the far greater silent threat of official displeasure. The performance itself becomes a treacherous tightrope walk, each step carefully measured, each line delivered with a dual intention, to enthrall the crowd, yes, but also to satisfy the invisible, watchful eyes of authority, to avoid the damning accusation. The physical demands of playing multiple roles, the humiliation of corsets and wigs, the battle with drunk hecklers, all of it pales in comparison to this raw existential fear. You realize that your greatest foe isn't a rival company or a forgotten line, but the insidious power of interpretation, the unseen hand that can twist your dramatic words into a treasonous act, leading you not to applause, but to the cold, unforgiving embrace of the tower, silencing you not just from the stage, but from life itself. The wet, sickening splatter hits your cheek like a cold slap, stinging against your skin. A slimy, foul-smelling residue immediately drips down your jaw, carrying with it the undeniable stench of decay, a putrid mix of old cabbage, decaying and sour. Your eyes, wide with shock, momentarily lose focus and you blink, trying to clear the unexpected assault. The sudden impact is followed by a burst of raucous laughter from the groundlings in the pit, a cruel, mocking sound that seems to echo around the entire globe, making your ears ring. You freeze for a split second, your body rigid, the carefully cultivated grace of the noblewoman you're portraying shattering under the indignity. The heavy, false curls of your wig feel suddenly askew, an added layer of humiliation. You can feel the slimy cabbage clinging to your skin, a physical manifestation of their contempt, and a wave of nausea washes over you from the smell. Your heart pounds a frantic rhythm against the constricting whalebone of your corset, a drumbeat of shame and adrenaline. Every eye you feel is upon you, not for your performance, but for this grotesque interruption, this public humiliation. You quickly raise a gloved hand, instinctively brushing away the worst of the detritus, trying to maintain some semblance of composure. Your gaze sweeps the crowd, searching for the culprit, but they are a faceless, jeering mass, emboldened by their success. Another, smaller object, perhaps an apple core, whizzes past your ear, a chilling reminder that the attack might not be over. Your carefully memorized lines, the elegant phrases of Shakespeare, feel utterly trivial, meaningless, in the face of such raw, visceral disrespect. The character, the illusion, all of it, feels dangerously close to crumbling under the relentless assault of the audience's scorn. You glance towards your fellow actor, who tries to cover your momentary lapse, his own face a mask of strained professionalism, his eyes conveying a shared, silent frustration and fear. You both know the precariousness of this moment. A truly bad turn in the audience's mood, provoked by this kind of incident, could escalate into a riot, with more dangerous objects and even violence aimed at the stage. And beyond the immediate danger, you imagine the watchful eyes of any powerful noble in the galleries, their disdain perhaps even deeper at such a display of vulgarity. Or worse, their judgment extending to the entire company for allowing such chaos. The fear of offending them, of losing their patronage, is a cold, creeping dread that never truly dissipates. The cold, wet splatter on your face is more than just rotten food. It's a brutal, physical manifestation of your precarious social standing, of the constant vulnerability of an actor. You are not just performing for applause, you realize, but constantly bracing for the next strike, the next insult, enduring the indignity, all for the fleeting chance to bring your stories to life, day after brutal day. The roar hits you first, a wall of sound so immediate, so unfiltered, that it feels less like a distant clamor and more like a physical force slamming into your chest. It's a cacophony of 1,000 individual voices, not just a collective hum, but distinct shouts, bursts of raucous laughter, jeers, and the rhythmic thump of stomping feet on the wooden groundlings. Pit. You stand on the stage, the rough planks vibrating beneath your boots, and there's no soft glow from modern lights, no darkened void separating you from the masses. Instead, the raw, unfiltered daylight illuminates every single face, every grimace, every expectant, drunken leer, making you feel utterly exposed, like a raw nerve laid bare. You are mid-monologue, delivering lines that demand gravity, but a high-pitched, slurred shriek from the front of the pit cuts through your carefully crafted words. "Get on with it, you tedious sot!" A man bellows, his face a ruddy mask of ale-fueled impatience. Another, equally soused, points an accusatory finger, yelling a crude remark about the absurd sight of you, a man, in a flowing wig and elaborate gown. You feel a wave of intense heat rise to your neck, a flush of acute humiliation, but you force your gaze past them, fixating instead on a distant post, willing your voice not to waver, willing your expression to remain perfectly composed. To acknowledge them, to respond, is to break the spell entirely, to invite more chaos, more direct, personal mockery. Your heart thumps, a frantic rhythm against the constricting layers of your costume, a frantic drumbeat of pure adrenaline and fear. A half-eaten onion, its pungent scent momentarily stinging your eyes, splatters against the stage just inches from your foot, a slimy, tangible reminder that their disapproval isn't just vocal, it can be painfully, physically expressed. You brace yourself, instinctively tightening your core, constantly aware of the arc of any object, from a rotten apple to a rock, that might come flying from the restless, easily provoked mob. Your carefully memorized lines, the profound poetry of Shakespeare, feels ridiculously fragile against this onslaught of raw human emotion, this tempest of public opinion. Every syllable you utter is a gamble, every gesture an invitation for either cheers or jeers. You feel the pressure of their collective judgment, an unforgiving weight that never eases. One misstep, one forgotten line, one moment of weakness, and the whole beast could turn on you. The company manager's stern warnings about keeping the audience engaged, about avoiding offense, ring in your ears, a constant reminder of how precarious your livelihood is, how easily this delicate balance could shatter, leaving you not just humiliated, but penniless. You realize that there is no invisible barrier here, no comforting fourth wall to hide behind. You are directly in their faces, directly in their world, fighting for their attention, their approval, and your very survival, with every breath you take. In this raw, unfiltered arena, you understand that an actor isn't just a storyteller. You are a gladiator, performing under constant threat, your dignity and your next meal dependent entirely on your ability to hold the gaze of an engaged, unpredictable, and often brutal mob. The thin, watery taste of the ale washes over your tongue, bitter and sharp, utterly devoid of the rich spices or sweetness of the noble's wine you occasionally taste. It's the common man's drink, your drink, a stark reality in the smoky, boisterous tavern, where the air hangs thick with the smell of spilled beer, cheap tobacco, and unwashed bodies. You grip the rough earthenware tankard, its weight familiar in your calloused hand, and try to blend into the shadows of the crowded room, hoping for a moment of anonymity, a brief respite from the relentless scrutiny of the stage. But it's a futile hope. A loud, booming voice from a nearby table slices through the din, cutting directly to you. "Look! It's the Queen from the Globe," the man slurs, his companions erupting in a wave of coarse laughter, their eyes, heavy with ale, fixed squarely on your face. A flush of heat creeps up your neck, a familiar, unwelcome sensation. He points, his thick finger singling you out, and you feel every head in your vicinity turn, their curious, often mocking, gazes a physical weight. You are recognized, yes, but not in the way a scholar or a prosperous merchant might be. Your recognition is laced with a rough familiarity, a casual disdain that dismisses the art, the dedication, the sheer brutal effort of your performance. They know the character, perhaps, but they do not respect the man beneath the wig. You offer a tight, almost imperceptible nod, a forced, practiced acknowledgement, hoping it will be enough to appease them, to prevent further, more vulgar commentary. You take another sip of the thin ale, its bitterness now a mirror, to the taste of humiliation rising in your throat. Just hours ago, on stage, you commanded their attention, drew tears or laughter with Shakespeare's glorious words. Now, stripped of the elaborate costumes and the illusion, you are merely a player, a vagabond, a man who dresses as a woman for coin, a source of crude amusement in a common alehouse. The social stigma of being an actor, a constant shadow in your life, presses down on you with a renewed, heavy force. The loud, drunken heckles on stage are one thing, part of the job, a battle to be won. But this quiet, personal mockery, the casual dismissal of your person, stings deeper. Your precarious life, always a balance between fleeting applause and grinding poverty, feels acutely vulnerable in these moments. You think of the endless roads you've trudged on tour, the cold barns you've slept in, all for this paltry recognition, this fragile existence. It's a stark contrast to the deferential nods given to even the lowest noble, a reminder of your place in society's unforgiving hierarchy. You set the tankard down, the clink of earthenware loud in the moment of quiet around your table. You realize that the stage offers a temporary kingship, a brief, intoxicating taste of glory. But in the dim light of the tavern, amidst the smells of spilled ale and coarse laughter, the harsh reality of your profession settles heavy in your bones. Here, you might be known, but respect, true, earned respect, remains an elusive prize, a taste as rare and distant as a rich, spiced wine. The chill isn't just in the biting London wind. It's a subtle, constant prickle that dances across your skin, a phantom touch of unseen, judging eyes. You walk through the narrow, cobbled alleyways, your presence drawing whispers, a ripple of recognition in the dense crowd. Children point, their grubby fingers singling you out. Women eye you with a mix of fascination and veiled disapproval. Men nod, some with a rough familiarity, others with a sneer that suggests shared knowledge of your trade. You are known, yes, your face illuminated by the fleeting fame of the stage, instantly recognizable from the grand tragedies and boisterous comedies performed at the Globe. But this recognition, you keenly feel, is a double-edged sword, a public acknowledgement that simultaneously marks you as an outcast. You hear the murmurs as you pass, fragments of conversation that cling to you like the pervasive smell of wood smoke and refuse from the open sewers. "That's the one who played the Queen," someone hisses, a low chuckle following. The words are not praise. They're a label, a pointed reminder that you, a man, willingly adorn yourself in corsets and wigs, performing what many consider an indecent charade. Your rough woolen tunic, stained with travel and use, feels suddenly inadequate, a stark contrast to the noble silks you embody for a few hours each day. The social stigma of being an actor, once merely a distant hum, is now a tangible weight, a mark on your forehead that no amount of stage glory can truly erase. You try to move with the same confident stride you use for your valiant heroes, but a self-consciousness creeps into your gait, a subtle hesitation. This fame doesn't grant you easy passage. It isolates you. A merchant whose wares you admire offers a curt, almost dismissive nod, his eyes lingering on your face with a cold, assessing gaze. He knows you, yes, but he wouldn't offer you credit, wouldn't invite you into his respectable home. You are seen as an entertainer, a necessary diversion, but ultimately a vagabond, a rogue, a person of questionable morals, forever existing on the fringes of decent society. The casual disrespect, the subtle snub, stings deeper than any thrown rotten vegetable from the anonymity of the pit. The paranoia settles in, a constant, low-burning fear that this public recognition makes you a target. Rivals might use your notoriety to spread malicious rumors. Censors might scrutinize your performances even more harshly. And powerful nobles, even those who applaud you loudly, would never truly consider you an equal. You are always under a different kind of spotlight here, a harsh, unforgiving glare that exposes not your talent, but your tenuous social standing. You realize that in this demanding world, the applause is fleeting, but the social stain of your profession is a permanent mark. You are famous, yes, a conduit for Shakespeare's genius, a momentary king or queen, but off the stage, in the harsh light of daily life, you remain an outcast, forever navigating the paradoxical space between public adoration and private contempt, a life both celebrated and scorned. The sharp grinding pain in your ankle is a white-hot spear, shooting up your leg with every attempt to shift your weight. It's a sickening, twisting ache that makes your teeth clench involuntarily, a silent scream of agony. You stand in the shadows backstage, leaning heavily against a rough wooden flat, your face pale beneath the heavy grease paint. The familiar smell of dust and old canvas fills your nostrils, now tainted with the sharp, metallic tang of your own fear. Your heart thumps wildly against your ribs, not from the excitement of the performance, but from a desperate, gnawing dread. You hear your cue, delivered by a fellow actor on stage, his voice resonant and clear. It's your turn, your grand entrance, a pivotal moment in the play, a dramatic flourish of a sword. But your foot, your entire leg, refuses to cooperate, screaming in protest with every tentative attempt to move. You glance down at your swollen ankle, the joint already puffing up beneath the worn leather of your boot, a grotesque parody of its usual agile self. There's no understudy. The concept is a luxury, a modern convenience utterly unknown in this ruthless Elizabethan world. You are the only one who knows these lines, this blocking, this intricate dance. Your absence means an entire scene, perhaps even the entire performance, is crippled, thrown into chaos. The company manager, his face a mask of impatient fury, gestures frantically from the wings, his eyes narrowed, demanding you take the stage. He doesn't see your pain, only the looming threat of lost revenue, of a disgruntled audience, of a ruined performance. You know what this means. No pay for you, a reduction in your already meager share of the company's profits, possibly even a harsh dressing down from Shakespeare himself. Worse, it means the precarious existence of your fellow actors is further threatened. A cancelled show, a significant disruption, could trigger whispers among rival companies, could dampen the enthusiasm of powerful nobles, eroding the fragile patronage that keeps your troupe alive. You bite back a groan, forcing a grimace of determination onto your face. You grip the wooden flat, pushing yourself away, a cold sweat breaking out on your brow. Every step is a fresh wave of agony, a burning sensation that threatens to buckle your knee. The stage, usually a place of exhilarating freedom, now feels like a treacherous battlefield, each plank a potential pitfall. The loud cheers and jeers of the audience, usually a vibrant backdrop, now sound like a distant, demanding roar, utterly indifferent to your silent suffering. As you limp onto the stage, forcing a heroic swagger through sheer force of will, you realize that in this life your body is your most vital instrument and your greatest vulnerability. There is no room for weakness, no allowance for pain. You are merely a vessel for the words, and the show, always, must go on, even if it means sacrificing a piece of yourself, day after agonizing day. Your throat feels like raw, scraped parchment, a burning, raspy cavern from a week of tragic laments, of desperate pleas, of death cries torn from your very soul. Each swallow is a minor agony, sending a fresh jolt of discomfort through your vocal cords, which feel swollen and bruised. You try to clear it, but only a dry, rattling croak emerges, utterly devoid of the power and resonance you commanded on stage mere moments ago. Your entire body aches with a dull, pervasive throb, a deep, bone-weary exhaustion that seems to have settled into every muscle, every joint. Your calves protest from countless theatrical sprints, your shoulders scream from vigorous sword fights, and your knees, raw from endless kneeling in moments of dramatic despair, feel like brittle sticks beneath your weight. This isn't just physical fatigue. It's the cumulative cost of embodying grief, madness, and violent death, day after brutal day. You slump onto a rough wooden bench in the deserted, tiring house, the air thick with the pungent memory of stale sweat, cheap grease paint, and the lingering metallic scent of the play's bloody conclusion. Your discarded costumes lie in a heap, the tattered robes of a dying king, the dark doublet of a betrayer, the simple shift of a tragic queen, each one a ghost of a life you've inhabited, each one having taken a piece of you. The ringing silence of the empty theater, now devoid of the audience's roar, offers no true solace. Instead, it magnifies the internal clamor of your own exhausted mind, replaying the harrowing scenes, the devastating lines, the faces contorted in sorrow or fury. You run a hand over your face, wiping away the remnants of makeup, feeling the rough stubble beneath your fingers, a grounding texture in the disorienting aftermath. Your mind, usually a chaotic archive of lines and cues, now feels like a storm-tossed sea, the emotional residue of half a dozen different tragedies swirling within it. The constant, gnawing pressure of memorizing hundreds of lines with no true rehearsal time, of transforming rapidly between characters, all weighs heavily, physically and mentally. You see another actor, slumped in a corner, his head in his hands, his silent weariness a mirror of your own. There's no understudy to share the burden, no respite from the relentless demands of the stage. The fleeting applause, the temporary illusion of power and glory, now seems impossibly distant, a cruel mirage. All that remains is this profound exhaustion, this raw throat, these aching bones, and the hollow ache of characters whose lives you've so completely inhabited that they refuse to simply leave you. You realize that in this demanding craft, you don't just tell stories, you live them, you bleed for them, and then you carry their echoes within you, long after the curtain falls, a testament to the brutal, beautiful burden of being an actor in this perilous world. The heat hits you first, a sudden, searing wave that makes you gasp, dry and scorching against your skin. It's not the usual warmth of a crowded playhouse. This is an inferno. You look up, your eyes wide with disbelief and terror, to see tongues of orange and red flame already licking greedily at the thatched roof directly above you, tiny embers raining down onto the stage, sparking and dying on the rough wooden planks. The crackling sound is deafening, a monstrous roar as the dry straw, ignited by a carelessly fired stage cannon, devours itself with horrifying speed. The smell of burning straw, thick and choking, fills your nostrils, instantly mingling with the acrid stench of smoke and fear. Panic erupts around you. The disciplined lines of actors, the hushed backstage whispers, all shatter into a primal, desperate scramble for survival. You hear screams from the audience in the pit, a collective, animalistic cry of terror as they realize the danger, pushing and shoving, a churning river of humanity desperate to escape the wooden trap. Your own heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic, desperate rhythm. You're still half in costume, the heavy velvet of your nobleman's doublet, suddenly a dangerous weight, threatening to catch fire, to drag you down. Your mind races. The narrow exits, the dense crowd, the sheer, overwhelming force of the fire rapidly engulfing the very roof that moments ago sheltered your art. You feel the intense heat radiating downwards, searing your scalp, burning your exposed skin. Smoke billows, thick and acrid, making your eyes water uncontrollably, stinging your lungs with every desperate gasp for air. You cough, a dry, ragged sound, trying to orient yourself, trying to find a path through the surging, panicked bodies of your fellow actors and fleeing audience members who have breached the stage. This isn't a scene from a tragedy. This is real, immediate, terrifying. The globe, your home, the very stage where Shakespeare's words found life, is being consumed before your very eyes. The thought of your precious cue scripts, the unique plays that define your company, all stored in the tiring house, flashes through your mind. They are undoubtedly already lost, reduced to ash. But the more immediate fear is physical survival. Your life, so precarious to begin with, now hangs by the thinnest of threads, dependent on navigating this inferno, on pushing through the desperate crush of bodies, on escaping the roaring, consuming beast of fire. In this moment of terrifying chaos, you realize that all the rivalries, the censorship threats, the fear of offending nobles, even the daily struggle for coin, are utterly meaningless. All that matters is the primal urge to survive, to escape the roaring heat and the choking smoke, as the very stage that defined your existence burns to ashes around you, a stark, fiery testament to the ultimate fragility of everything you hold dear. The acrid, choking smell of burning timber and wet ash fills your lungs, making you cough uncontrollably, a harsh, ragged sound that tears at your raw throat. It's a taste, too, metallic and bitter, clinging to your tongue, refusing to be dislodged. You stand outside the perimeter, your face streaked with soot and tears, the heat from the smoldering ruins of the globe still intense enough to make your skin prickle. Smoke billows upwards, a thick black column against the bruised London sky, carrying with it the ghostly scent of charred wood, burnt cloth, and something else. A faint, unsettling whiff of something indefinable, something that feels like loss itself. Your eyes, stinging from the smoke and the lingering heat, scan the devastation, where once stood the magnificent wooden, the very heart of your world. Now only a skeletal frame remains, black and twisted, still sending up faint tendrils of smoke into the evening air. The thatched roof is gone, consumed entirely, leaving a gaping, empty maw where soaring soliloquies once filled the sky. The stage, the tiring house, the galleries, all reduced to a smoldering heap of ashes and rubble. The silence, now that the roar of the fire has faded, is a profound, suffocating emptiness, punctuated only by the distant shouts of firefighters and the mournful creak of dying timbers. Your heart feels like a lead weight in your chest, heavy with a grief that transcends mere bricks and mortar. This wasn't just a building, it was your livelihood, your stage, the place where Shakespeare's genius truly lived, where you, a humble actor, found your purpose. Now it's gone. The reality of it hits you with a cold, brutal force. You are truly penniless. All your costumes, your precious cue scripts, the very tools of your trade, are lost, reduced to ash. The company, your family, now scattered, and adrift, faces an uncertain future, perhaps even dissolution. The fear of plague closures, the dread of rival sabotage, the anxiety of offending powerful nobles, all the old anxieties that once consumed your waking thoughts now seem trivial, swallowed by this one, overwhelming catastrophe. You feel a profound, aching sense of displacement, of a world irrevocably altered. The camaraderie, the brutal competition, the shared struggle that defined your existence, now floats like smoke, dissipating into the cold night air. You rub your soot-stained hands together, feeling the grit of ash clinging to your skin, a tangible reminder of the devastation. This isn't just the end of a playhouse, you realize. It's the end of an era, a searing, fiery testament to the fragile, ephemeral nature of even the grandest creations. In this acrid smell of a world turned to ash and smoke, you stand, a solitary figure, stripped bare of your artifice, your roles, your very stage. And you realize, with a heavy heart, that the greatest performance of your life might now simply be the grim, desperate act of rebuilding, of finding a new voice, a new purpose, amidst the ruins of everything you once held dear. The fading afternoon light, a thin, golden wash, bathes the stage in a melancholic glow, stretching long, exaggerated shadows from the wooden pillars across the worn planks. It's a final spotlight, unyielding and honest, illuminating every dust motes dancing in the air, every scuff mark on the floor, every familiar imperfection of the world that has been your life. You stand mid-speech, your voice, usually so robust, now feels weighted with an unspoken significance, each syllable carrying not just the character's emotion, but a profound, bittersweet sense of finality. The air, usually thick with the scent of unwashed bodies and anticipation, now feels infused with a delicate, almost sorrowful quiet from the crowd, a sense that even they understand this is an ending. Your gaze sweeps across the faces in the pit, the groundlings who have cheered and jeered you for seasons. Today their shouts are fewer, their heckles less cutting, replaced by a quiet attentiveness, perhaps even a shared understanding of this moment's gravity. You spot familiar faces, the regulars whose approval or disapproval has shaped your performances. Their eyes, usually demanding, now seem to hold a touch of wistful reflection, recognizing that this particular magic, this specific company, is drawing to a close. A memory flashes of a rotten vegetable narrowly missing your head during a particularly bad turn, a contrast to the respectful silence that hangs in the air now. You feel a strange mix of relief and a pang of loss. Your body, aching from countless hours of demanding physical roles, from the vigorous sword fights to the constrained movements of a cross-dressed lady in a suffocating corset, feels both utterly exhausted and strangely invigorated. You push through the familiar pain, finding a new wellspring of energy for this last flourish. The humiliation of playing women's parts, the uncomfortable wigs and powder, now feels like a distant, almost cherished memory, a necessary part of the brutal journey. This isn't just the end of a show. It's the culmination of months, years, of navigating censorship threats, avoiding treasonous lines, enduring the cutthroat politics of gaining Shakespeare's favor, and the constant, gnawing fear of plague closures that could leave you penniless. You deliver your final lines, the words resonating with a deeper meaning now, a personal farewell woven into the bard's enduring poetry. As the scene concludes, a wave of applause rises, not the usual boisterous roar, but a more sustained, heartfelt outpouring, a recognition of not just the performance, but the profound effort behind it, the precarious life lived on these very planks. You offer a deep, lingering bow, your eyes taking in every detail of the familiar stage, the beloved, rickety, tiring house behind you, the faces in the fading light. In this moment, as the final applause washes over you, you realize that the life of an actor is a perpetual cycle of fleeting endings and uncertain beginnings. You have survived the storms, the censors, the scorn, and the sheer physical toll. And now, as this chapter closes, you carry with you not just the exhaustion, but the profound, unyielding strength of having lived 1,000 lives, all for the brief, beautiful glory of the stage. The faint, cold scent of extinguished lamps, of damp wood and forgotten grease paint, clings to the air around you, a melancholy perfume in the now utterly silent, tiring house. You run a weary hand over your face, wiping away the last smudges of stage grime, feeling the coarse reality of your own skin beneath. The final, distant echoes of applause have long since faded, leaving behind a profound emptiness that seems to absorb all sound, even the soft rustle of your clothes as you shed the final remnants of your costume. Your body, aching from the day's demanding roles, the vigorous sword fight, the passionate speeches, the constrained movements of a cross-dressed lady, feels heavy, leaden with a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. You sink onto a rough wooden bench, the familiar coolness of its surface, a small comfort. Your mind, usually a chaotic archive of lines and cues, now feels strangely hollow, filled with the lingering ghosts of characters, of emotions fully inhabited and then abruptly discarded. The sheer mental effort of memorizing hundreds of lines with no rehearsal time, of swiftly transitioning from one identity to another, leaves a dull throb behind your eyes. You recall the incessant fear of a misspoken word, the ever-present threat of a censor's wrath, the cold dread of accidentally offending a powerful noble, all the daily anxieties that shaped your performances. And you remember the relentless grind of touring, the terrible weather, the rough roads, the indignity of sleeping in cold, flea-ridden barns, the hostile stares from villagers who deemed you little more than a vagabond. The silence is a brief, fragile reprieve, a moment of respite from the clamor of violent audiences, the crude jeers of drunk hecklers, and the cutthroat competition with rival troops always lurking in the shadows. But beneath this temporary quiet, other, deeper anxieties begin to stir. The constant fear of plague closures, that invisible killer that could empty the playhouses overnight and leave you utterly penniless, is a cold, familiar knot in your stomach. The hard-won coins from a day's effort, barely enough to secure your next meal, offer little comfort against the vast uncertainty of tomorrow. You close your eyes, taking a slow, shaky breath. The weight of the world, your world, feels immense. You, a mere player, an illusionist of fleeting moments, live a life that is both celebrated and scorned, constantly teetering on the brink of fame and utter destitution. The grand, resonant words of Shakespeare, the profound human truths you brought to life, exist only for the span of a breath, an ephemeral whisper against the vast indifference of time. In this quiet, reflective aftermath, you realize that the melancholy echo of an actor's life is the haunting awareness that everything you create, everything you are, is made of fleeting breath and transient moments. You pour your heart and soul into these characters, these stories, only for them to vanish into the air, leaving you once again a solitary figure, facing the relentless, uncertain dawn of another day.